evening. I am joined by a very interesting guest who our paths actually were meant to meet across about 3 or 4 years ago, and I've always wanted to track down this lady because I think her business is quite an interesting one. So if you are joining us this evening and are interested in how farming and agriculture meet, then I think this podcast is definitely for you. But firstly, before we continue with our podcast this evening, I want to encourage every one of you to just please engage with us, ask questions, and ask the guest questions, because we are here for you. We're trying to get the best knowledge and value out of our podcast so that you leave at the end of the evening with many questions answered and having a bit of a background and knowledge into the agriculture industry, whether you're a farmer, an aspirant farmer, someone in agribusiness, whatever the case might be. I really hope that these podcasts are informative and that the guests are bringing value each and every week. And so we are also running a competition. I'm not quite sure which week we're in now because I've just lost track of the dates, but it's a 12-week competition that we're running. Please check our website for all the information. It's the Sherlock Holmes competition that we're running, and each week we're giving away prizes to certain winners that have really cracked the riddle to this competition. So once again, follow our social media pages, follow our website to get more details in this competition. So I really want to introduce you to Jacqui Taylor, who's our guest this evening, and she's the CEO and founder of Agritourism South Africa. Jacqui, thank you so much for joining us this evening. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm well. I love what I do, so I'm passionate. So, yeah, I can talk for years about what I do very well.
That's good to hear that you're well. So maybe let's just get straight to the talking, because I want to know, as a farmer, how does one combine agritourism, agriculture and tourism together? And basically, maybe tell us about how you founded Agritourism South Africa.
Yes, Mambali, it is a story, but I grew up on a farm where my dad was a farm manager, and I don't think you can ever really get that farm component out of you, that feeling of being on a farm. And I worked, I then obviously left school, worked and in tourism and in agriculture. And in 2016, what I noticed was that there was a gap in the market because people wanted to learn about farming. But I also saw that rural towns were becoming poorer and poorer, and there was almost a disconnect between people in urban areas and farmers. And I thought there's only one way really to bridge that gap, and that is via tourism. But when I talk about tourism, I'm not talking about tour groups. I'm talking about facilitating really on an educational level. So whether it's at a school level, how do you grow vegetables, or, you know, where does the milk come from that you're buying? So it was really I started it as a non-profit because for me, it was a passion I had to connect people. And it has developed, and I have so much joy in what I do. I meet the most amazing people from rural communities, from farmers to visitors. And since COVID, what has really made me happy, because it has been a tough time, is that we are focusing more and more on domestic tourism and domestic visits. So people, when you talk about domestic tourists or domestic visitors, you're talking about people who are out of their area where they live for a period of 24 hours. And that has opened a whole new market, and all of a sudden people are really starting to appreciate farming. And that was always the goal. This is not a pension fund. This is about showing of South African farmers and bridging that gap. And as I say, I have a huge amount of enjoyment in what I do. I meet the most incredible people.
So how does it work, Jacqui? Like, for example, I'm a farmer, and what do I have to do to ensure that I get visitors on my farm, or I work with Agritourism SA?
I think there are a couple of things that I always advise farmers to do, and that is to decide, what do you have really to offer? What are you prepared to offer? And if you are more an introvert and, for example, you don't want to do farm tours, then you can work with someone within the community or within the local rural area who could do that part of the farm tours for you, because I understand also farmers are very busy people. I mean, I remember growing up, we worked 7 days a week, and we worked on the farm, we physically worked on the farm. So often you don't have the time to maybe entertain guests or to do farm tours. But that's the whole thing about agritourism, is really to broaden the employment opportunities in any rural area. You don't have to be a farmer to become involved in agritourism. You can be a tour guide, you can cook. And I think really the magic behind all of this lies in working together as a community, because one person might do farm tours, another person might do accommodation, and another person might do camping or whatever it is. But if as a farmer you start off, you've really got to decide what your involvement will be. What do you have time to do? And then obviously come up with a business plan. I always say rather start small and then see what works, what doesn't work, and always involve your next door neighbors. If you don't really get on with them, well, then the next door neighbors. But you need backup as a farmer. Sometimes you're harvesting and you can't really have a school group or a farm tour. And so you need to have some backup, and that's where working together is, whether maybe it's an agritourism route. Maybe you choose 5 different types of farming in your area, an accommodation venue, and you put it together as a route. And then it's easier to package for visitors, so they know that they're not just going to one destination, but they will go and spend a whole weekend or a week or whatever it is. So it's all to do with the farmer. It comes back to the farmer and the level of involvement that they want with tourists or with visitors.
Yeah.
But don't think of international. When I say agritourism, it's local. It's about South Africans. Yes, we do, wine tourism, you get international visitors. But I'm more interested in the rural towns, the rural communities. And actually, my focus is on women and children and really empowering them. And I frequently see women disempowered in rural areas because they're not given the opportunity to either work or to learn a skill. And that for me is important. If you want rural families to stay on the land, then we've got to broaden what we actually can do in those communities. And that's why agritourism creates job opportunities. That's one form of rural development. And I'm really passionate about it because there are not a lot of things that can create employment opportunities in rural areas. It's very limited.
Wow.
With transport and other issues.
Yeah. Jacqui, you mentioned that it's up to the farmer firstly to create maybe a program or a tour guide or a day visit program if they're going to be working with you guys. And so, and you mentioned that, you know, the farmer also has to have a business plan. So I want to know, do these tour visits or excursions, do they have to be paid or non-paid? And how does a farmer get onto the Agritourism South Africa platform? Is there a membership fee that is involved in that as well?
I think it's important because there isn't a membership fee, so you can list. And then if someone does come via the platform, there is a commission of 10 or 15%, but it's via the platform. So many farmers find that it actually benefits them because we're fairly strong on social media, we're fairly strong from a media perspective. I'm a journalist as well. So we actually do market and tell people about areas that are not only on our membership routes or our members. And when I'm talking about members, I'm talking about people who have approached us and have said, listen, Jacqui or Kanya, Camilla, we're a very strong woman-focused team. And yes, and then I would always say, well, let me help you. You know, I can more or less point out what you need in a business plan. And it's really a matter of going on the website. My contact details, everybody's contact details are on there, our WhatsApps. We work 7 days a week, just like farmers do. So we really are open-minded and we are family, you know, and I think that's the difference between us and other people. We understand agriculture, we understand farmers, and we understand their needs, and we're willing to listen. Wow. And help. And I think that is really something different. It's not the average. You can get listing sites and booking sites and there are thousands. We're not into the numbers game. It's never been a numbers game. This is about truly helping the farmer. And I'm talking about the smaller farmer or the family farmer. I'm not talking about huge corporates because they have their own ways of marketing themselves. So from your perspective, all you need to do is have a look at the website and then ask questions. I've also written a lot of articles about how you start, what you need to do, what you need to consider. And yes, I think COVID's done something amazing for the agritourism industry, and that is people really want to connect. When I say connect, it can be connect with themselves, but it can also be going outside, putting their feet in the ground, feeling grounded, feeling like they have a bit more control in their lives, and noticing the beauty and seeing that crops are still being harvested and that rain still falls and that it's not all the doom and gloom that you have in urban areas. And we've really seen a lot more interest in people wanting to go to farms. And to answer your question about whether people pay for trips, say you're doing a farm tour, always charge a fee. And that is because then people respect your time. And you've got to be strict about that as a farmer because you're trying to farm. Farming is your first interest and everything follows from that. So this business of giving things out for free, I'm not saying you charge huge sums of money, but I am saying there must be value attached and there must be respect for a farmer. So people must not just pitch up. I remember on the farm where my dad was a farm manager and he earned really little. I think he earned 29 Rand a month. And people from the cities always used to come and picnic on the farm. My dad used to say, well, what are you doing here? And they said, no, we're picking apples, and we're doing this and that. This was the time before agritourism. But then he soon enough learns, if they're going to be picking apples, that really is a crop, so they need to actually pay for the apples that they pick.
Yeah, because that's our income, we get our income from our harvests and the crops. Yeah, so that's funny. I like the concept that it's an additional source of revenue that farmers can make on their farms, and I like the fact that you also mentioned school tours, because it's also I think it's imperative that we show the young ones, where their food comes from, But I also want to ask, Jacqui, you mentioned a lot to do with rural areas. Can farmers in peri-urban areas or in urban areas partner with Agritourism South Africa? So, for example, think of farmers, for example, like myself, that are in Johannesburg, or farmers that are farming in rooftop farms in cities. Can they also, reach out to Agritourism SA?
Yes, absolutely, because at the end of the day, they have a higher footprint. In other words, more people are going to be visiting the rooftop farms, and there's actually a great project, the Alexander Green Route. I don't know if you know, but it's just awesome. So, yeah, it's rooftop farming with art, and it's just brilliant. And that is closer to the schools and close to educational centres, and also transport is sometimes a problem in South Africa. So you need to move the farming business or farming closer to urban areas so everybody can take advantage of learning how to plant a carrot. And that's why I'm very supportive of schools who teach their learners, this is a vegetable garden, this is your patch, you can sell whatever produce you've actually grown or whatever the issue is. And that is, yes, definitely part of Agritourism South Africa. I refer to the rural areas simply because that is where the majority of the harvesting takes place, or the agricultural produce comes from. But I really would like to see urban areas produce their own crops. And that is going to lead to a far healthier population and cheaper food. If you don't have to transport it that far, it becomes cheaper, it's healthier. And whether you're old or young, there's something where you'll understand, my body, of just putting your hands in the ground. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm making it sort of spiritual or something like that. I just love it. I just love taking my shoes off and my toe is full of mud and stuff. And there's something special about it. You understand. I think there's like a farmer's sort of conversation, probably.
Absolutely. Some people wouldn't understand, because many people say, oh, no, farming is not for me, because they hate the insects on their face or the bites. They hate the sun or the excessive rain or the extreme wind. So, yeah, farming is not for everybody. And maybe this is a conversation we should have behind the scenes. But Jacqui, my other question is, you mentioned also that it's not... It's great to get local individuals visiting South African farms and understanding where their food comes from, etc. Do you get interest from international visitors? And if you do, what sort of requests have you had in the past from international visitors?
Right. Well, obviously, COVID, we haven't had much of that. But before, we've been going since, as I mentioned, 2016. So the type of inquiries we get are actually from other farmers. It's interesting enough, particularly the Australians, the Canadians, the English, and Americans. They're all very interested in looking at how we manage with limited water resources and with limited finance.
Wow.
They are very keen to come over, and mainly they come in farmers groups. So that is about 10 to 15. And those type of visitors want to meet the actual farmers. They're not interested in some other sort of artificial experience. They want a real farming experience. And then you get other people from overseas who just want to, they've heard about the openness in South Africa, and they live in Scotland or somewhere where you can drive across in 4 or 6 hours. So they just want to go out into rural South Africa. And there's also a great interest in meeting different cultures, food, different types of food. And I think in South Africa, what we really have not focused on is indigenous crops, and actually telling visitors, even South Africans, showing them how to produce a really nice meal or cook a really nice meal from our indigenous crops. It's just something that's been totally lacking. So you get recipe books are Italian or whatever, but what's wrong with our own indigenous food? And it's so healthy, and we don't need huge amounts of pesticides and all those things. And I really think that should be a focus in schools as well. What are our indigenous crops? And a little less about sort of Norwegian salmon would also be good.
Do you assist the farmers in the program for the day or for the hour, depending on how long the visit is? So, for example, just a program of when the visitors arrive, what they'll be learning or seeing, and, you know, are there breaks in between, and then maybe the chat with the farmer. Yeah, so do you sit down with the farmer, I suppose, in that business plan that you mentioned, and go through the program of the day?
Yes, it's very important to find out what the visitor wants before you approach the farmer, and then also to talk about the needs of the farmer. Most international visitors do want a bit of fun time. And when I'm talking about fun time, they do want to see maybe game, or they do want to go to a beach or whatever it is. So you've got to put a program together. But it really does depend on the farmer. There are Australian farmers, and they want to know about our indigenous goats because they have climate change issues. So yes, it really is fairly varied, but it's always discussed first with the visitor and the farmer, so everybody's on the same page, and that's important. So there's no over expectation or under delivery or whatever it is. And sometimes it rains, sometimes it's just too hot. It's part of the environment in which we work. But it's what it is. Yeah, but the more women we can include. There's actually been an interest. There's a big tour operator in the United States, and they were going to come out actually in February, and they just wanted to meet women farmers in South Africa.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so that's really great. I think that's, it shows that pride is turning.
Very unique. I like that interest in women farmers and interest in indigenous crops. I think that's something to consider quite strongly. And let's talk about the international visitors as well. How has your business changed now that we've been affected by the global pandemic? So how has your business changed, and I suppose, what are the goals or the strategies for the year 2021?
The business has changed in that the demographics have changed. So the people who are traveling and prepared to go out and have new experiences are actually millennials. And then those sort of what I call from the 18 to 30 group, 18-year-old to 30 years old, and they want to exercise or cycle, or they just are fed up with being sort of in an apartment, and they want to get out, and they do not have the fear factors that people over 60 do. And so the demographics have changed, and we're seeing far more young people, which is fantastic, which is great. And I think the other demographic, it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen in 2021.
Okay.
It's going to depend on the vaccines for the viruses. It's going to depend on a whole lot of things.
Yes.
But I do think that most of the people who have contacted me since November at least feel safer in a rural environment than in an urban environment.
Yes.
And that is simply because there's more fresh air, they can walk, they can do whatever they want to do, or cycle, or just basically breathe in fresh air, where they're nervous to do that in urban environments. And I think we mustn't see agritourism at all as elitist or something that someone can only afford if they've got money. I'm talking about camping sites. I'm looking at farmers. All farmers have spare land. No one farms 100% on their property or their plot. There's always a little gap somewhere. And with that little gap of land, you can do various things. And you'll find that people between the age of 18 and 30, they are quite happy to bring their sleeping bag and their tent. They have no expectations. They're not the 5-star crowd. They just really want to have a farm experience. They want to wake up and, the chickens and whatever around them. And so that makes it a very affordable experience for tourists. I really think agritourism is probably the most affordable visitor experience. And then as a farmer, you're on sell. And I think this is also where agritourism comes into its own, is that if you've got someone camping and they bring their own tent, or they're cycling and they have their own tent, then they want food, because they would prefer to eat properly, they would prefer to buy from the farmer. And there's another direct source of income for the farmer. And it also helps with seasonality and all those issues where you've got a lot of product X. And they want fresh local food that is in season, and they're not fussy. So I think, and I'd love to see school groups doing this. And yes, it's all about opening up the rural economy and the rural towns, but also urban areas. We should be supporting markets I know it's prohibited under COVID, but when we have farm fresh or fresh farm produce at markets, I always buy there. I mean, why go to a shop, have something with so much wrapping on, it drives me mad, and packaging that I just throw away or recycle? Why not just choose tomato and whatever it is? And there's a lot of joy in that. There's actually happiness that comes from just doing something that simple. It doesn't have to cost a lot. Simple is good.
Oh, it's very interesting, Jacqui, because as you're talking, I'm starting to think of the multiple ways that farmers can work with neighboring farmers or nearby communities and actually create employment in that small ecosystem. Because if I'm hosting a farm excursion, a farm tour for young children, like school tours, and maybe let's say I'm a poultry producer and I'm producing eggs. You know, maybe there's a farmer next door, maybe producing tomatoes, and then there's a farmer, you know, down the road producing, I don't know, like fruits or something. You know, we could just all together as farmers collaborate and have different visits each farm, and then, for example, and then you know, every child can obviously go home with some farm goods, and it creates such a great exposure. And I suppose in addition to that, it could create a small mini market, you know, with these farm excursions. So I really think you guys are onto something here, and I think I'll definitely be contacting you, you know, to just work together.
Because
just repeat that?
I can't tell you that one of my best experiences was when I went to egg farm. It was free-range eggs, and the farmer, and there was a fee involved, and they gave me 6 eggs as a takeaway present, but I'd actually paid for it in the tour, but it's fine. And the stories, you know, when you go home and everybody said, like, I couldn't wait to have my eggs, and I spoke about it, and that's great marketing. That is real marketing. It's not PR marketing.
Absolutely. And I mean, these farm tours, I'm sure, can happen even on a weekend where, like you said, you know, no farmer actually uses 100% of their farm. But, you know, we could essentially, I'm just bringing ideas here, that farmers can have picnic sites as much as there's an excursion, and you're seeing all the different aspects of the farm, and you get to meet the farmer, the farm managers, the employees, and you get to experience the entire production. I suppose at the end of the day, you could, you know, create some space for the visitors to just picnic and just spend a day at the farm. So definitely great initiative that you have, and so many ideas could pop up, you know, with these excursions or the visits. And it's interesting to know that, you know, for example, like your international visitors or clients also have an interest in meeting female farmers. And I think that is something that we need to definitely bring to the spotlight, because we are there, you know, there are many female farmers in their small corners of the world. And also just think about, because you mentioned rural areas, the female farmers that are farming in the small holding, in their small holding areas, in the rural areas. You know, some of them are working together as community groups, etc. And it's definitely a great opportunity for them to get exposure from international visitors. And I'm sure other opportunities spring up, you know, not to put pressure on the visit, but I'm sure other opportunities spring up where people can get help from the visitors, or get contacts or connections or potential investors, you know. I don't know if such has happened in the past with any of the tours that you've hosted.
Particularly of women farmers and their children, to ensure that their children can afford to get not only school books, but the school uniforms. And then there's what I call the lifetime commitment, which then goes to university. So yes, it is a process which really should be encouraged. And what I like is really to get Gran involved as well, because the grannies are the storytellers. And there's such a rich history in Bali. Where sometimes I just listen, and I can listen for hours to the stories. And storytelling is something that we should also be encouraging in rural and urban areas. We don't tell enough, we don't speak enough about our actual stories. You know, it's all sort of iPad or Facebook or whatever it is, someone else's story, you know. And we've actually got incredible stories in this country, and people want to hear them. So that's another, you know, there's another employment opportunity. And maybe while people are eating or having their picnic, there's opportunity for someone to tell the story of the valley or the story of the farm or whatever they want to talk about.
Wow. Oh, Jacqui, thank you so much for this conversation. I've definitely learned a lot. And I will be in touch with Agritourism SA. Maybe get some people come out to Joburg and see some farms in Joburg. And I think I'll definitely spread the word with some of my farmer networks, because everything that you've said today really sparked a small idea in my brain. And I didn't know that, Agritourism SA just went through to such depths of, exposure about the agricultural industry, and that the tours can be, I suppose a couple of hours or a day, or, long term, and just think of many ideas as a farmer to just generate additional revenue for your farm. So thank you so much for this conversation. I just want to find out, so you said that for more information, farmers alike, as well as the tourists or visitors, can get all the information on your website. And especially from a farmer's aspect, you have information that guides them into how to prepare for a farm visit or a farm tour. Is that correct?
That is correct. And remember that I have my phone and it's always on, and my WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Farming times, we can't switch it off in case something happens. So people, my WhatsApp number is there, and people are welcome. Watsy's number is there, Kanya's number is there. So yes, the all-woman team are very available and make themselves available if there are additional questions or just advice or just chat.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Jacqui.
It's a pleasure, Molly.
I appreciate it. Thank you. That was Jacqui Taylor, the CEO and founder of Agritourism South Africa. If you're a farmer and you missed this conversation, I feel sorry for you. However, the live will be on Private Properties YouTube channel after the show. I think if you're a farmer, whether you have a game farm, a crop farmer, poultry farmer, livestock farmer, whatever commodity that you're producing, and have heard this conversation between myself and Jacqui, I think you should get in touch with Agritourism South Africa, come up with innovative ways to generate additional revenue for your business. Furthermore, just exposing your farm to nearby communities or communities within other provinces, showing them where their food comes from, how you produce food, how is it as a farmer that you've gotten to where you are today. I think it's great benefits not only for your farm or for the visitors, but for the country at large, just exposing individuals to this phenomenal industry that we are a part of, which is agriculture, and which is also the backbone of many other industries. So I think what Jacqui and her team is doing with Agritourism South Africa is fantastic, bridging the gap between agriculture and tourism. And this is an opportunity for you as well. Like Jacqui said, if you've been stuck in your small apartment in the urban areas and you just want a bit of fresh air, obviously observing the COVID protocols, with masking, etc. I think maybe go onto their website, have a look at the farms that have some listed tours, and maybe just take a drive and explore our country a bit more. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I will also encourage you to please watch all the other podcasts that we have for the rest of the week, and I will see you on Thursday at 8 o'clock with another guest. Thank you so much for joining me. Good night and God bless.
Good night.
Thank you, Jacqui.
Hi, I'm Juanita Bobs. I'm a BCom student at Stellenbosch University. I currently live in Valkefonen Estate and I absolutely love this area. Historically, Stellenbosch is known as a student town. It offers an incredibly peaceful lifestyle, and the people around town are always welcoming and friendly. Because it's a small town, there's an amazing community vibe with some really authentic coffee shops and restaurants. The trees along Victoria Street create a beautiful environment to be in, and it's really cool for students passing through campus. There's some excellent boys and girls schools in the area. Our town has such a rich history, but at the same time it's really modern, and you'll find some amazing art installations all around. The sunrises and sunsets are some of the best in the world. It's the most beautiful place to call home. I've lived here for the past 5 years, and it's been an unforgettable experience. And this is my neighborhood.